What's up YouTube? Welcome to Cars, Cost, and Technology. Today we're going to be reviewing the 2017 Mustang Shelby GT350, courtesy of Fairway Ford in Greenville, South Carolina. Now for those of you that have followed the channel for a while, this is actually the dealership that hooked me up my very first review car a few months ago. It was the Mustang GT California Special, so huge shout out to Fairway Ford for being a longtime supporter of the channel and allowing me to review both of these vehicles. I've got all their information listed in the description below, so if you're in the market for any new Ford vehicle, definitely check them out. But back to today's review, we've got the GT350 here, finished in grabber blue, which is a really good looking color. A lot of Corvette guys have actually said that they wish Corvettes would come in this color. I can see why. When you see it in person, it really is a good looking color. I don't know if the camera will be able to really do it justice throughout this review, but speaking of my Corvette, I'm going to do a quick Corvette key comparison like I do in a lot of my videos. You can see here you've got their respective badging on the back of each key. As far as functionality goes though, it's pretty much the same. The only difference in the buttons on the front is going to be the remote start option for my Corvette. Let's go ahead and get this car unlocked and jump in, get it started up. Now I'm going to refrain from going over the numbers and all the details that I normally cover in my review until after we've done a little bit of driving. I'm sure most of you are dying to hear more of this 5.2 liter Flatplane crank engine. It sounds pretty amazing, so we're going to do a lot of driving clips here, give you guys a chance to really hear that noise. Let's just get the exhaust switched over to sport mode and we'll go for a ride. it's definitely safe to say that this engine absolutely screams. It's crazy to think that the GT350 has a redline of over 8,200 RPMs. When you compare that to a more traditional American V8 that would redline around say 6,000 to 7,000 RPMs, that's pretty impressive. Now this engine has been tuned to sound more like a familiar American V8, but it's got some really exotic technology under the hood here. When you look at the characteristics of an engine like this with a flat plane crankshaft, I'm sure you've heard that it has a higher redline, a unique exhaust note, but there's also some major changes in the way that torque is delivered, and also it handles changes in speed much differently than a crossplane crankshaft like you'd see in a traditional Mustang GT or even in my Corvette. Now, part of that is due to the fact that a crossplane crankshaft requires counterweights on two of the planes in order to balance the engine, where on a flat plane crankshaft like we see in the GT350, it only requires counterweights on one of the planes. So obviously when you have less weights, there's less mass spinning, less inertia, and it's able to adjust quicker, but it's also able to spin faster without damaging the engine. So that's why the engine is able to rev so much higher, but it's also why it has less low-end torque, and it also creates more vibration than, say, a traditional crossplane crankshaft. There's also a pretty significant difference in the firing orders for each of the cylinders in these two configurations, which is the primary reason that the exhaust note sounds so much different. Here's an example of each. I personally think that both options sound great, especially in these two cars. I don't think you can go wrong either way, but obviously it's going to be a matter of personal preference and which one that you think sounds better. Now let's change gears here a little bit and move on to the cost of ownership involved with the GT350. First thing I want to touch on is the window sticker. Now normally I would just include this at the beginning of the video and it would be something that you could find on the website based on the spec that you choose, but the reason I'm including this in this section of the video is unfortunately with the GT350, it's going to be very hard to find one of these without it being marked up over the MSRP. This particular one is marked up $5,000 over the $60,000 MSRP, putting it just at a $65,000 asking price, and that's going to be pretty common with anywhere that you go to purchase a GT350 or especially a GT350R. Unfortunately, the demand is high on these cars and the supply is low, so they're able to ask more than the MSRP. It's not something that I like to see as a car enthusiast. You always want to see your car available at either MSRP or significantly lower, depending on how you're able to negotiate the deal. But it's something that you need to keep in mind if you're thinking about purchasing one of these. They're also going for a premium on the used market, the last that I had checked, so just something that you need to be aware of. Again, this one's going for $65,000 asking price with a $60,000 MSRP. That's probably pretty consistent across the board with other dealerships selling these. Now moving on, let's talk about the cost of tires on this car. I found something kind of unique and interesting here. This car actually has the widest front tires of any vehicle that I've reviewed, including the Z06 that I reviewed a little while back. This is 295s on the front, and you can see the price is really high, $339 for front tires versus $270 for the rear tires. Pretty unique there. The GT350R actually has 305s on the front, so that's extremely wide tires for the front of a car. Now obviously if you were going to be buying this car for drag racing, you would need to get those switched out pretty much immediately, because that's going to be just way too much drag on the front, going to slow you down. This car doesn't exactly have the most impressive 0 to 60 times or quarter-mile times in its stock setup, but for the track, this is great on the other hand. You know, it does have really large brake rotors, it's got these really wide and sticky tires, so it's a great setup for the track. But I just want to point out how wide these front tires are, and the fact that it's actually wider than any of the other cars that I reviewed. These front tires are wider than a lot of the cars that I've reviewed rear tires, so pretty interesting there, but you're looking at about $1,200 for a new set all the way around. Moving on to insurance premiums, it looks like for me at 25 years old with no tickets or no accidents on my record, obviously it could be significantly different for you, my 6-month premium would be $849 or just about $1,700 per year to insure this car. That's an increase of about $188 per 6 months, or roughly almost $400 more per year for me to insure a GT350 over my existing Corvette. You know, this is a quote directly from my insurance company, so once again I just like to emphasize that it could be drastically different for you. Now moving on to the final category of this section of the video, we have the fuel expenses. Unfortunately, this car is subject to the gas guzzler tax because of its 16 miles per gallon combined city highway usage rating. It is going to be hit with a $1,300 gas guzzler tax. I know at the end of the day, no one can really control that. That is the government's prerogative. Obviously, they're trying to discourage the production and purchase of cars that aren't very fuel efficient. But, I think that's very discouraging as a car enthusiast to see that when you're purchasing a car you're already going to spend more on gas to own a car like this, and then you're getting hit with over $1,000 just to buy it. Again, that's not going towards your down payment. That's not going towards any accessories for your car or anything like that. That's just strictly, a penalty for buying the type of car that you like. It's pretty frustrating. Again, at the end of the day, there's not really much that can be done about it, but I just wanted to kind of speak out on that. They're estimating that you're about $2,600 annually in fuel costs, about $6,000 more than the average vehicle over the course of 5 years. I disagree with some of those figures just simply because I don't think a car like this is going to be driven the amount of miles that a quote-unquote average car would be driven. I could be wrong. There could be someone purchasing it as a daily driver, but it just doesn't quite fit the bill for me, at least in this review. With a city rating of 14 miles per gallon, a highway rating of 21 miles per gallon is definitely not the most efficient car out there. But, again, I think potential buyers for a car like this aren't exactly interested in fuel efficiency. I know even with my car, being a Corvette, I definitely didn't buy it even really considering fuel efficiency. Luckily, it is a very efficient car in terms of fuel, and it's not subject to these, gas guzzler tax or anything like that. But again, I think that it's just something that you want to keep in mind, but I certainly wouldn't let it become a deal breaker. With the average price of gas being around $3 a gallon for premium, with this having a 16-gallon tank, you're looking at about $50 to fill this tank up, and it's probably going to be something that would need to be done pretty regularly if you're driving the car hard. Again, 14 miles per gallon city, pretty low. You can tear through a tank of gas pretty quickly with that. Finally, I just want to take a moment to discuss the interior with you guys. As you may have imagined, the GT350 shares a lot of its interior components with any other Mustang in the lineup in terms of placement and materials, but thankfully there's a few subtle changes that make the car feel sort of elevated and worth the price point that you're paying here. There's Shelby badging throughout, which looks really good, and the Recaro seats with the suede inserts feel awesome. These have really, really nice bolstering and definitely make me wish that I had the competition seats in my Corvette, because these feel much better than my standard seats. You've also got the Alcantara wrap steering wheel with the Shelby logo in the center, which looks great. You can definitely tell when you get in the car that it's more prestigious than just your standard Mustang, and I'm not going to say that it's a perfect interior. There's always room for improvement, but overall I did like the interior, and I think that they did a good job of making those subtle changes in order to make it worth this price point. Unfortunately, I did not have a chance to spend much time with the infotainment system, so I don't have much to report there for you guys. We'll have to table that for now. But overall, if I had to give a verdict on this car, I would say that it's a fantastic car. Really great value, even with the slight markup that's still happening. Hopefully that will level off, and eventually there won't be a markup on these cars in future generations. But overall, a very special car. I can see why they're producing such limited numbers. I know that's not going to appeal to everyone, but for the people that it is right for, I can see where the value comes in, and I certainly understand. I do think that the Corvette for now is a better fit for me in terms of just efficiency, practicality, and even value at this point in time. But I do see where this is a very special car, and the GT350 certainly is going to hold a special place in the hearts of a lot of car enthusiasts. But very thankful to Fairway Ford for allowing me to review it. If you guys enjoyed this review, please give it a like and let me know in the comments what you thought. But I hope you have a great day. Thanks again for watching.